All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this talk with Miriam Pugliese of Nido di Seta in Calabria, Italy. This talk is being co-hosted by the William Morris Society in the United States and the Decorative Arts Design and Craft SIG of the Art Library Society. This program is also being recorded, so feel free to share this with others after the program or to come back and access this video later if you would like to review any of the things we talk about today. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Miriam to get started and on our presentation.
Good evening, everybody. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Miriam, and I'm really honored this evening to talk about silk and our company that is Nido di Seta. But what is Nido di Seta? I really would love to share with you some picture that can help me show you our word. So, what is Nido di Seta? Nido di Seta is a co-op of young people. We come back in Calabria to let relive the ancient art of silk. And we asked to the municipality of San Floro is a little village of Calabria, the possibility to manage an abandoned land where there was on it more than 3,000 plants of mulberry tree. But what is Calabria? Where is Calabria? Calabria is the toe of the boot, is really south, is a really particular land because our mountains and hills ending in the sea is made by little villages on top of hills. And all Calabria, this kind of big, has more or less 1,800,000 people. So we are not really a lot, and we are always less actually. We are really famous for our flora because we have really a wonderful variety of flora, and also for the really pure air. We have the cleaner air of Europe, but also we are unfortunately one of the most depressed economical area of Europe, actually. So here is where everything starts. Here there is the mulberry orchard, and this is the piece of the one of the 5 acres of land that we asked to manage to the municipality of San Floro. I mentioned before, San Floro is a village in Calabria. We are more or less 500 people in the village. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of people are left. In the last centuries, a lot of people went away, like my parents. My parents moved to Milan. Then I was less than 1 year old. So that's why we are talking about we return to the land and we return to Calabria. So I will just to let understand what is behind Nido di Seta really shortly talk about how we arrived to have this idea of founding a company where the main activity is the breeding of silkworm and sericulture, actually. So this is a nice college of pictures. So I grew up in Milan. I'm specialized in foreign languages, and I was flight attendant for Lufthansa. And so my life was between Milan and Europe. And when my experience with Lufthansa finished, I had the opportunity to go in Berlin, so I lived in Berlin for a while. This was 2012. This experience completely changed my way of view of a lot of things. In 2012 in Berlin, there was a big movement of guerrilla gardening. So everywhere, really everywhere, there were really old things or things that were not able to be used anymore, like old sofas or old refrigerators or old bath, and they were really reused to grow everything. So in 2012, the guerrilla gardening was seen like a way to change the world. So the um, was like if everybody in the world was were able to do guerrilla gardening, a big part of the world were able to change. These things really helped me to see my homeland Calabria in a really different way, because when I was really really little in Calabria, I saw this everywhere. My grandparents used to cultivated tomatoes and basil and really a lot of vegetables in an old refrigerator or old bath, or really reusing everything and planting everything everywhere. So one of the most important city of Europe saying that these kind of things would be change the world was like to me thinking, okay, so in Calabria we are really forward under this point of view. So I understood the importance of also our culture here in Calabria. And this brought me to do a flight from Berlin to Calabria. And with the other two guys that you saw in the first picture, we have all different stories. So Domenico, for example, lived 6 years in Naples. He has 2 degrees with honor, not nothing with agriculture, so it's more political science and sociology. But Giovanna is has a degree in an art academy. So we have all three completely different background, but we wanted all three in the same time really strong stay in this little village that is really far from the we are in Calabria, doesn't really exist industries, so it's really far from the touristic areas. So it's really an authentic and wild place. So we were wondering, okay, we want to stay here, but what we do? So Domenico knew that in our area there was 5 acres on land completely abandoned, where the property was of the municipality. So he thought, why don't start from here? So in this land, there were more than 3,500 mulberry trees. And to better understand what to do with this land, we had to do a lot of researches. And we find out, and this is really sad in my opinion, because our story nowadays is a little bit different, also thanks to our little work. But nobody knew that Catanzaro, Calabria, was the bigger producer of silk between the 14th and the 17th century here in Calabria. Raw silk was exported all over Europe, and also there was a huge trade also of damask. Uh, all our grandparents, until our grandparents' generation, all used to breed silkworm to create the things for the trousseau, to give you an idea. So after the decline of the silk market that happens for really a lot of reasons here in Calabria, the farmers used to follow doing the breeding of the silkworm. to create their own thing. So it was an alive tradition until the generation of the grandparents. Here you can see Domenico doing some renovations, taking care of the land. Actually, we fight with the municipality. We have been fighting with the municipality for 1 year before they gave us the permission to work on this abandoned land. And we had really to hard work because so imagine the garden of your house if you don't take care for a couple of weeks. Imagine 5 acres of land in the middle of a pine forest that were completely abandoned for more than 25 years. So we had really to do a big work to just to arrive to the trees of mulberries, and also to create the trails and to clean. And still nowadays we have a lot of work. So I really would love to talk about the how Calabria was important in the past. So just to give you an idea, we find documents where in our little village of San Flora, that in the past used to count something less than 2,000 people, nowadays are 500, were produced 1 tons 600 kilos of silk cocoons. I don't know if your life you have experienced to have one silk cocoon in your hand. It's really, really, really light. So that gave us the proportion. So how big was the production of silk in the past without any automatization? And unfortunately, our farmers used to live in small houses, and all the family used to breed the silkworm in the house. So you need to imagine a 2-room house where in one room there was the kitchen and the bedroom for at least 7 people, because the smallest family was had at least 5 kids, with chickens, pigs, and living all together. And under the roof, they used to breed silkworms. So to build again the silk route, to let relive again the silk tradition, you have to go back and study really a lot of our history. And here is how looks like our mulberry orchard today. This is just a little part. We have more than 3,000 plants. Some of them, unfortunately, in the period where this land was abandoned completely, they died. But we now we have at least 3,000. So nowadays we are probably the last company, the last silk farm in Europe that lives just taking care of the sericulture project. So there are other reality in Europe that we can count in a hand. They do sericulture, but they do sericulture combined with other activities like grape and wine, like hazelnuts, like they do other things in agriculture, not just the breeding of the silkworm. We do just this, and to live and to create development, basing us just on this field, we have to be really multifunctional. So we have 4 main fields. The first is, like I said before, the agricultural one. So the from the mulberry we use the leaves to breed the silkworms, but the mulberry trees made also the mulberries that we collect and we sell fresh, or we do the confiture and liqueurs and teas, and we sell to Sicily to make the really wonderful granitas and so on. We have cocoons. Here you can see Domenico really happy for a really good breeding. So as cocoons is the final result of the breeding of the silkworm. So the silk cocoon is another agricultural product. Then there is handicraft. So nobody, when someone think about silk, think always about a really luxurious textile. But actually, silk is an agricultural product. So we need to breed the silkworm for 28 days before having the cocoons. And the cocoon is the base for the process of the reeling of the silk. So here you can see me during the silk reeling. And we take care of all the process from the silk reeling to the twisting to the degumming to the dyeing and to the weaving. So when we started in 2014 until 2016, we were just us free taking care of all the steps of the silk production. But after two hands a person and 24 hours a day weren't enough, so we made a really cool a call in Calabria where we asked if there were artisans interested in take part of a creation of a silk supply chain. And nowadays we have eight artisans, each one specialized in one stage of production of silk. So we have spinners, we have twister, we have degummers, we have weavers, and I'm really happy to say that all these are women. That for us is really important, actually. But I think we will talk about later about this. And so we have four fields. So one is agriculture, the second is handicraft, third experience. We fall in love with silk because it's incredible the magic of a worm that create these wonderful cocoons that is exactly a spool of thread that with nothing, just with hot water and really natural brushes like ether brush, we are able to extract the most precious and strongest natural fiber of the world. And we thought, okay, we need to let people experience all this beauty and all this magic. So we create silk experiences. So we let live all the silk world to a lot of people. So when we started in 2014, we were able here to guest 1,500 people. And before the pandemic, more than 6,500 people came here in our little village of San Floro to live the experience of silk. So just hear the noise of the silkworm crunches the leaves, or the magic of the silk between the fingers during the reeling is something really incredible. And we shared all this every day with people coming from all the world. And the fourth and last field is the academy. So before the pandemic in 2019, we had a problem. So we have request of silk and silk product like scarves and so on, but our artisans were enough. So we had an idea to open an academy of silk, and where it's possible to learn all the different fields of the world of silk. So we have silkworm breeding lessons, we have silk reeling technology, we have natural dyeing, and we have weaving lessons. So and the purpose of this academy was to create new artisans, because we need artisans. And it was the academy was a success, but the 98% of our students come from all the part of the world, are not local. So this thing didn't solve the problem, but we open another didn't solve the problem of our so we did new artisans, local artisans, to let follow the tradition of silk. Nowadays we have just one more after the academy, and all the other students come from really all the part of the world. Here, for example, you can see people come from Finland, and here we have people from Finland, Argentina, United States, England, and so on. So unfortunately, we are the last people in the Western world who still do these kind of things about silk. So was a short representation of what Nido di Seta is. So,
Okay. Um, Thank you so much for that, Miriam. And I have a couple of questions for you. And if anyone has any questions, please leave them in the chat and we will answer those at the end of the presentation. So feel free to add those. My first question for you, and I was lucky enough to visit Nido di Seta over the summer. So I got to hear the sound of the silkworms eating the
yeah.
leaves, which honestly, it's kind of hard to imagine until like literally thousands of them eating at the same time. It's shockingly loud. Um, but my question for you is, we saw the history of silk making in Calabria. We see the present day, which is the operation of Nido di Seta in its current iteration. But what is the future of silk in Calabria and the future of Nido di Seta?
Oh, yeah, that's a wonderful question. Actually, we are trying to combine different things. So, well, we start this kind of work because we want to do like a happy degrowth, came back to the land and starting from the land to create new perspective. So that's our ideal. So we still nowadays we're building the develop of the next generation on this idea. But but um, it's really difficult to combine the going slow with the development of a country. For us, silk is a way to create development in a really difficult area where is unfortunately I have to tell this. I can really do a wonderful list of the most beautiful things of Calabria that I saw just here, but we need to be honest and say that Calabria is the most depressed area of Europe where women doesn't work, so unfortunately, so they are not independent, and for us it's really important to make a change. People escape still nowadays. Young people goes away. My parents went away, so we live 2,300 kilometers away. So with our work, we want to make the difference. We want to create new perspective of future, especially for the next generation. So to do this, you can't go slow, unfortunately. So we are trying to find the perfect equilibrium to follow our ideal, but in the same way, change. Like I said before, I love also to stay here because here the individual can make the difference. So uh, and how we make the difference, taking care on abandoned land. So unfortunately we are also really known for the fires. We have a lot of fires during the summer. Everything burns here, but if the land are not abandoned and someone is taking care of the land, this doesn't happen, for example. And one of our goal of the future is to have a bigger network of farmers that will plant mulberry trees in abandoned land. 2 years ago, we had unfortunately a huge fire. In that days, all Europe was burning, and the the thing that saved us to not be completely burned were the mulberry orchard. The mulberry orchard saved all our property. So that was the limit where the fire stopped, and was really huge fires. So part of our village was evacuated after 5 days of fire. So I think also you in United States, you know something about this critical situation that today happens. And also the cultivation of mulberry tree is really important for our territory, because also the roots of the mulberries helps the land to don't go away. So we are made of land. Our land is made of clay and sand, so it's really important to have trees that block the land. And with our work nowadays, we are 3 people plus 6 people that work seasonally, and we have a network of 8 artisans. They are all women that still do jobs. They are going to disappear. I don't know in your contact how many spinner and weavers you know, for example, but they still works by hand, completely by hand. So with our little work, we always work with we always talk with humble. With our little work, we let this profession does to don't disappear, and they can create an income that they invest in our small villages, because they are not in San Floro. They stay in other small villages like San Floro, spread all over Calabria. So investing their income in their villages, they help to the process of fighting the depopulation of these small villages. So when we talk about our future, we will, of course, we want to follow this work of development that starts from the ground. So, and it's something that just start, just for me. In 2 weeks, we will do the 10th years anniversary. So, and look at back at these 10 years, I can say, wow, completely, this time completely fly away, but we did something.
Gosh, rookie mistake. I have a couple of questions for you that showed up in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and start fielding those to you. The first one is from Kartika, and she would like to know how you twist the silk filaments and how many filaments do you put together and how thick is the final yarn that you produce?
It depends. We have different kind of. Oh, I can probably I have to open here. Okay, I didn't see the question before. Sorry. So it depends. If we work like our ancestors used to do, we do one unique thread, twist once, and this one unique thread is composed by at least 100-150 cocoons. So it's a really thick thread, and this is the thread of our tradition. And this is just twist once. Then nowadays, we invented also a machine that allow us to do a really fine thread. The 2022, probably you know, the thickness of this thread is less than an hair, to give you an idea. But this kind of thread is just able to be worked just by machine. It's impossible to work by hands. This is part of how we see our future. So we need to use innovation to let these ancient tradition survive in the future. And then, okay, why did the mulberry tree stop the fires? Because abandoned land has a lot of you first you need to know that here in especially in summer it's really hot, and abandoned land has a lot of really dry grass on. So if you don't work the land, the grass stay here. And in this incredible hot period, also doing can make a fire. But if the land is work, and if someone is taking care of the land, there is absolutely less possibilities that a fire can go on. And our mulberries are like a fence, a natural fence, because we take really care of them, following always the regenerative agriculture rules. But these things help the fire to don't go forward, because doesn't have nothing dry to burn actually. Do you market the silk you produce? Wonderful question. I have to say yes. Nowadays, what we do, we can sell the cocoons, we can sell the silk, we can sell the product. So we have scarves, foulard, and t-shirt, and so on. But now we have an agreement with an important high fashion brand that we can't sell the silk yarn to anybody, so just to them, because they invest in what is Nido di Seta. This is another story actually. So after, if we have time, if you are interested, we can also talk about that if you want. Also, there is something special about the Calabria climate that is good for mulberry trees. Actually, mulberry trees is a fantastic plant because can grows everywhere. So where we are is kind of humid also, so grows without problem. But the mulberry trees can grow really everywhere in the world, probably just on the pole. It's not possible. Wait. One. Okay. How many millimeters would that thread be approximately? We are around. I can say in deniers, so there are more or less 280 deniers. Do you have example of this old type of yarn? Let's see if I have some picture. Yes, I have some pictures, but or raw silk. I have no, I have picture. Oh, I will share the screen again. Let's see. Okay, just a second. Finestra. Okay. So here is the thick raw silk. I try to zoom. You can see that it's really thick. It's really, really thick. And then this is our piece silk. So probably all you know that to make silk, how we know, we need to stop the process of the moth. So to make the silk, the pupa doesn't have to finish the metamorphosis, so the cocoon have to be dried. And then it's possible to reel the cocoon to make the silk. So there are different kind of silk in the world, and we have this is the digam one. So this is not the raw one. This is our traditional thread digam, to give you an idea. And what I was saying, there are different variety of piece silk, because especially in India there are different way to there are different variety of silkworms. So it's not important for this variety to stop the silkworm life cycle, because doesn't matter if the cocoon is flickered or not. And we apply the method to make the silk of the other silkworms to the flickered cocoons of Bombyx mori, that is the variety of the silkworm that we use. And we make this really particular thread that I show you. This is our piece silk made by the flickered cocoons of Bombyx mori. Okay, then yes, 100 people. Yes. I went into a rug factory last year in southern Turkey, and say a silk production from the worms to silk to dyeing. Where would they have gotten their silkworms? This is is a wonderful question. Actually, there are some places in the world where, for example, we were like this too. We have eggs from generation to generation. But here in Europe, we have a center that is the European Sericulture, the European Sericulture Institute, that is in Padua, in northern Italy. That they provide certified eggs, and they sell and they send this all over Europe. So probably they are in Turkey. Probably they have these eggs from generation to generation, because the really first breeding that we did was made with the eggs that some grandparents had from the year before. So probably I think that they did like this. I also wanted to ask you the yellow silk cocoons you show. I missed the first 40 minutes. Okay. But does the yellow cocoons produce naturally yellow silk? So if so, how do you find your eggs? No, for the color of the cocoons, it is for the variety. So we have the silkworm that produce the silk that everybody knows. So the conventional silk is Bombix mori. We have really a lot of different variety of Bombix mori, and the indigenous variety could be of four different colors. There are yellow, yellow gold, green, and pink. It's really nice to know that the white one doesn't exist in nature, was invented by humans in the 18th century. That's the story actually. We need to say that the yellow color, or all the colors, also the pink and the green and the yellow gold, um, they don't keep the color after the degumming process, because the pigment is connected to the sericin. The sericin is the glue of the fiber. So when we do the degumming process, the colors will go away anyway. Do you produce and sell silk for people who don't have spinning like me? No. At this moment, we don't do. We have a piece silk kit where we give all the things to create your own piece silk, where there is handles, there are flickered cocoons, the degumming cocoons. But I think that you already further this what we sell is just for beginners. So I asked a two question, I think.
Okay. I know you had a video you wanted to share with us, which I didn't think you get a chance to do. So
Yeah, so
would you share the
actually,
video?
here I have to do a little introduction to this. So when we started this, nobody of us has knowledge in the silk field, so we had to learn. So our first teacher were the elders of our village and nearby villages, but this gave us the chance to learn wonderful things, really useful things, but not to create a company. So what we had to do was like backpack and travel all around the world to understand what was going on in the silk world. And we did different trips. One of the first is in Thailand. In Thailand, we had the opportunity. Wait, I need to this in Thailand was our really first trip, and we did a wonderful experience, but we realized, okay, for example, starting from here, we realized that also there is not a big production of silk anymore. The 99% of the silk that is on the market nowadays come from China. And we were able just to visit one place where they used to reel the silk. That was in Thailand, in the border with Cambodia. And here in this picture, we can see their variety of silkworm. This is really different from ours. For example, you can see that has these black stripes, for example, and they do a really particular cocoon. And we really fall in love with their way of dyeing and making the silk. Here you can see Domenico that is really in the same, that is really the silk in the with their method that is really different from ours. For this reason, we were um, really surprised, because they don't for example, we do skeins. When we read the silk, we do skeins, but they do this. They collect the thread like this, like in the basket, and they put like a powder of rice to let the thread to dry. And another thing really important is that for in this part of the world, the pupa is a really important source of food. And here Domenico had, this was nice to show you, but Domenico here had the pupa, and FAO organization says that this will be the food of the future also for us human beings. And yes, here is the tie and dye. This is the factory of silk that we saw, and this is a demonstration on the beautiful tie textiles that they do with silk. They do this wonderful motif, and each motif had really a meaning, and it was really incredible. And yeah, here we were inside the Konkan Institute of Sericulture that let us understand different thing about the Thai way to do the silk. Actually, they do like we do. So for just for the first step, because they use a lot of cocoons to make one. Like in the Calabrese textile tradition, we do too. But the way that they do to do the first twist to the thread during the reeling, and also the way where they um, collect the thread after the reeling, it's really different from ours. Here you can see the Thai variety of silkworm, and it for us it's really nice, because here in the center of Italy, there is a particular variety that is exactly the same of the Taiwan. Also, because actually we are kind of sure that all our variety were imported from Asia, actually. And I would love to show you also the picture about of our, if you want, obviously, of our Indian experience, because we, for us, that was the most important experience. We really learn a lot, and we really think that the Indian way to make the silk, not just about the way to make the silk, but also the organization of all the silk chain, is the best for also us, for Europe. So we are inspiring by the Indian one to build the one here in Calabria. So this is our farmers who breed silkworms just to inbreed. So this is like a seeds production. And then the eggs go to another entrepreneur who makes the first stages of the silk breeding. So usually do the first 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks are the most important, really the most important, because the silkworm is really sensitive to everything, sensitive to pollution, sensitive to humidity, to temperature, to really, really everything. So he takes care in a really controlled, in really controlled room where he can control humidity, temperature, and also the circulation of air for the first 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, they go to other farmers that are, I can say, more poor, that they don't have the possibility to control temperature and humidity, but silkworm are bigger and they don't need them much. They always need, a lot of care, but not like when they are small. And here farmers do the last 2 weeks of the breeding until the cocoon, the making of the cocoon. And for us, something that was really magical to see was the cocoon market, because the production of silk in that area, here we are near Bangalore. We have been between Mysore and Bangalore. The production of silk and silk cocoon is so big that there is a market. In this market, every day, all the silk farmers bring the cocoons, and the people that have the silk reeling machine goes there and choose the quantity and which kind of cocoon they want. And then there are riders who packed all the cocoons and put on the top of the head and bike to the silk reeling factories. Here there is a new site of the silk reeling factories. We were also guests of the Central Silk Board, that is part of the Ministry of Textile in Bangalore, and they said that silk is made by women for women. So that's why, because in the breeding of the silk, in the reeling of the silk, there is really a big percentage of women. So they want to develop the silk industry also to let improve the employment of the Indian woman in India. And it was really, incredible for us, because there is hot water everywhere, but there were kids running and play and sleep, and it was like everything was for us was so crazy, but for them, but the atmosphere was so natural. So in that atmosphere, we didn't were afraid of someone get burned, to give an idea, because seems that was absolutely normal in this way. Here there is in another reeling factory, and here in India they used to do a really particular kind of silkworm that is bibble time, so are eggs that can hatch twice a year. And these cocoons are this kind of yellow, so this is the natural color of the silk, because is a light yellow cocoons, the one that they use. And this is the skin of raw silk. Here is the place where from the skin they make the spindle, and here where they twist. And here is the worst part of all the process, because thanks to this visit we really decline all the possible use of the chemicals in the silk dyeing. We have been in this place and we were able to stay here 5 minutes, because we had a really big problem in taking the eyes open. Really, our eyes were literally burning, and we have really big difficulties to breathe. In this place they used to dye the silk, so all the colors that you see are chemical colors, and they are really full of heavy metals. Not, obviously not the group, but we have inside really really dangerous things. I know the name I'm sorry for this, I know the name in Italian but not in English. And these people that is here have the Average the average age was around 45. It's a pity that you can't see the eyes because it was completely red, and this is what they used to have, just a textile all around the back, nothing else. And the really bad part of all this is not the, a lot of people say, oh, who cares, there are a lot of problem with the work, the security on work all over the world. Okay, but we care really a lot. But actually the really huge problem is that there is not a system where all this really poison water are collected. So these wonderful colors are put it on the ground, and there is a system of tubes, and this water was used to irrigate the nearby fields. What we saw all around was fields of ginger, tobacco, and tea. They were irrigated using this water. So I leave to you all the consequences. And then here we have, and the weaving. Here we are in Central Silkboard, where we have these really intensive lessons of how to manage and reel the silk. And this is for us really important, could give us the chance to discover more about the innovation in the silk world.
Um, thank you so much for that. I think we only have
I,
a couple more minutes, and
okay,
so I
wait,
just want,
wait. I don't hear you. Okay, I'm sorry.
that's okay. We are only have a couple more minutes till the end of the program, so I just wanted to give you some last questions, and then we'll wrap up for the day. And thank you so much for your presentation. I know at the end, you showed kind of, there's a balance between wanting to be, and this is going to be a challenge coming forward in Calabria and looking towards the future of silk in, all around the world and in Europe, of balancing kind of the commercial success of your business, but also trying to balance that with staying true to your principles. And this is the William Morris Society, so of course I'm going to mention, William Morris believed a lot in using natural dyes and respecting the land that the mulberry trees are growing on, and that you're growing the worms on. So how do you see that balance going forward with the future of your business?
But for us, so silk is, like we said before, is an agricultural product. So to have silk, we need to take care of the farmers. So when we think about the future, we can't think of a future where take care of the farmers. So we have different high fashion brands that are interested in buying our silk that has really high price compared to the silk of China, because is ethical under a lot of point of view. And for us it's really important to take care of this, the first step of the supply chain. So we are trying to really don't go down with the price. In this way we can always ensure an equal price to our farmers first, and always try to spread the world. So making silk not intensive but regenerative. So also using practice that absolutely doesn't use chemicals and respect our land, because we are really lucky here in Calabria. So we don't have industry, so we're really virgin under a lot of point of view, and we can't start. Absolutely, we need to preserve this particularity.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to ask one last question before we end the program, and that is just some people that have inspired you in your practice, that have brought you think, to where you are today.
Okay, so I want to show who is my hero. I have to show you really, 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 really quick. She is my hero. She is my grandma. She has 7 kids, and to go work, she used to walk for something like 2 hours, because she had to do at least 20 kilometers walking, and then doing like 12 hours planting tomatoes and collecting tomatoes, and then back home. And she thanks God to have a donkey that could help her with her work. So when I am in difficulties, I think about her. She really inspires me, and he's like, I really think about her a lot doing my work. And there are a lot of other less romantic people, but really powerful. I We talked also the other day about, for me, I really love Elsa Schiaparelli. To give you an idea, for me it's really important, actually, the women world, in general, but here in Calabria more than ever, because Calabrese women are really strong. Just get out them from the houses, and they are incredible, strong and organized. And you know these women, for me, can help also trying to figure out how to build a better future for our women's the women's of tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much, Miriam. And it was
Thank
a
you.
real treat to learn more about your practice and your business. And I am going to include, if there has not been, there we are. Thank you. Someone put in the chat the link to Nido di Seta's website. So if you guys would like to learn more about Nido di Seta, or even plan a visit, if you ever happen to be in southern Italy, I'm sure Miriam would love to introduce you to the cooperative, and you can see everything firsthand. So I am going to wish you a good night, Miriam, because it is
You.
7 p.m.
Yes.
in Calabria. So thank you so much for spending your evening with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really honored, and thank you really much. It was an honor for me, really. Grazie mille. Ciao,
Ciao,
arrivederci.
ciao.